Hello and welcome to Rapid Fire Wednesdays Q&A for corporate immigration professionals. I'm Kimberley Robidoux, a partner in WR Immigration's San Diego office, and I'm here today with co-managing partner of the Boston office, Miki Matrician. How are you doing today, Miki?
Good. Hi, Kim.
Hey, we're on separate coasts again.
Exactly. Different time
That was
zones.
good. Exactly. Good to see you. All right. So for today's installment, we are going to talk about marijuana and how it impacts people who are not US citizens in the US, but also, how it has an effect on the immigration status, which is hopefully helpful for HR and global mobility professionals, as well as for foreign national individuals as well. So what prompted this discussion on marijuana, you ask? Well, I went to my chiropractor just recently, and he was telling me about his experience recently on a flight from San Diego to Vegas. So he was heading out on a flight. The plane was delayed because of mechanical issues. And then they were able to board after a period of time. The plane started out on the tarmac, stopped, and returned to the gate. Why? Well, one of the flight attendants caught a 20-year-old or 20-something-year-old having smoked marijuana in the bathroom of the airplane. So that meant they had to return to the gate, wait, and then they started out again. So now they're delayed, a few hours. And the flight attendant, or maybe it was the pilot, I don't know which one, but one of the authorities came on and said to the passengers, this might make you feel a little bit better about the significant delay that you just experienced. That gentleman who was caught smoking marijuana in the bathroom of the plane has now been arrested for a federal offense, will be fined at least $20,000, and is going to be on the no-fly list. So after I was thinking, this is just crazy. What a flight, right? And oh my gosh, what's happening with this individual and how it impacted everybody. But as an immigration attorney, my mind went directly to, what if this person wasn't a US citizen? Like, how would that impact them? And, it's one of those questions, right, Miki? Like, how would this impact somebody who's not a US citizen?
Yeah, totally. It's definitely something that non-citizens do need to think about. And given that marijuana is not legal on the federal level, even though I think sometimes people forget because now it's legal in many states. And to your point in your story, I had an HR professional reach out to me not too long ago about an individual that they wanted to transfer to the US on an L1 visa, and had found out from this individual that they had been convicted of possession of marijuana in their home country more than 10 years ago. And the conviction had been expunged, meaning it doesn't show up on their criminal record when they pull a report. And the US non-immigrant visa applications and for ESTA, there are questions like, have you ever been arrested or convicted for any offense or crime, even if you are the subject of a pardon, amnesty, or other similar action? Then there's the other question about, have you ever violated or engaged in a conspiracy to violate any law relating to controlled substances?
Yeah. So if their conviction is expunged, right? Many people does it need to be disclosed on the application? Our understanding for many of us, and we learn a little bit more as immigration attorneys, but if something has been expunged, typically everybody thinks, well, it never happened.
Exactly. I mean, you would think that typically if a conviction's been expunged, it should be as if it never happened, except in the immigration context. U.S. immigration rules are not that kind, right? So even if a conviction has been expunged, no matter how long ago, it still needs to be disclosed for U.S. immigration purposes.
Yeah. So Miki, here we have something that we consider kind of normal recently, marijuana, especially here in California. But with your client, what ended up happening in that situation?
Yeah, so they needed to get a waiver from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security before the L1 visa could be issued. So we had to prepare a waiver request that included getting copies of the conviction documents and affidavits from the individual and family and friends to show good moral character and that they hadn't possessed or smoked marijuana since the conviction. So the visa was eventually issued, but it took several months for the waiver request to be reviewed by the government agencies and then for an approval to be issued. And so it really was a disruption to the business operations because the company couldn't transfer the individual as quickly as they needed. And that person happened to be a key individual with, special skills that they really needed to have in the US right away. So it did disrupt the business. Kim, have any of your clients ever had that come up?
Yeah, I've had that happen in the past, and it's something to think about. It isn't just, I guess, smoking marijuana or ingesting marijuana, but if someone is in any way in a process that relates to marijuana, so the harvesting of marijuana, if there were the company that financially benefits from growing marijuana or selling marijuana, it could have not only an implication on clients like yours, right, with getting an L1 classification, but it could result in someone who's already here being kicked out of the United States. It could result in a permanent resident potentially being placed in removal proceedings and being deported. There's all kinds of things that could happen negatively to impact a non-US citizen's status in the US once they're already here. And, like I said, it could just be participating with a company that is involved in that industry. So in my particular case, and there have been a few, but the one that comes mostly to mind is an individual who is Canadian citizen who had a job offer from an agricultural entity, actually, but a company that grew marijuana. His offer was to come to the US to be an accountant for that organization. And because of these, laws, we really can't do it. Unfortunately, that's going to become a major problem for the individual, to be an accountant. I mean, a TN would be pretty easy for a Canadian accountant, but in this case, there were so many other issues to think about. So that's one of the things that you and I think about, right, Miki, when it comes to the immigration world. And then when we work with some of the younger professionals who are just embarking on their career, and they may have gone to a US university or college, just hanging out with friends on a Saturday night, smoking marijuana as opposed to having a martini or something, that we might go and have a drink at the bar. That can really have a negative impact on someone's, immigration status throughout the course of when they're here in the United States for as long as it's a federal offense in the United States. So it's really one thing that we take for granted to a certain extent, but we want to make sure that our clients and HR professionals are educated on this, what could seem so just, hey, I'm just hanging out on a Friday night, and that could have a devastating impact.
Totally. I mean, and that 20-year-old on the flight, as you say, if they weren't a US citizen, they could be facing serious issues. And I think, as you say, it's important for HR and global mobility to be educated about this. And I think it's important to emphasize, and you already mentioned this, but just to highlight again that green card holders are subject to those rules too, because sometimes I think people forget that, I'm a green card holder and I'm a lawful permanent resident. It doesn't mean that they're immune from deportation on these issues. So I think it's important that you flag that as well.
Yeah, those are really good points, Miki. To think about those factors.
Yeah. All right. I think that's a wrap for us for today's session on marijuana.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you for joining us. If you don't already, please follow WR Immigration on LinkedIn. You can also follow Miki and me on our personal accounts on LinkedIn. And we also transcribe our Rapid Fire Wednesdays into a newsletter that we send around on a weekly basis. And we would love for you to subscribe. So until next week, have a wonderful week, and just remember our points about marijuana.
Thanks, Kim.